Welcome back, everyone. I am so pleased to introduce our next presenters, Doug Mansfield and Ruthvik Uppaluri with Designer Shoe Warehouse, and they will be talking about DSW's planning cloud migration. Doug and Ruthvik, take it away.
Thanks, Sharon.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. First of all, I'd like to start out by thanking Edward and his outstanding team for putting this together and inviting us to present today. My name is Doug Mansfield, and I'm Senior Manager of Financial Systems for DBI. Some of y'all may be more familiar with DSW, Designer Shoe Warehouse. We're headquartered in Columbus, Ohio. I've been using Oracle products now for almost 20 years. I've used on-prem products and the cloud. I've used everything from S-Base, planning, DRM, HPCM. Some of you may know that as profitability cost management, FCCS, ARCS, PVCS, Hyperion Financial Report Studios. Also joining me today on the conference is individual that works for me. His name's Ruthvik, and I'll let Ruthvik introduce himself today.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Ruthvik Uppaluri, and I work as a senior analyst at Designer Brands. My background primarily has been on EPM, BI, and analytics. At DSW, we manage several planning, financial consolidations, account reconciliations, and financial reporting studio over here. And I really appreciate Interrel for conducting or organizing today's retail virtual conference. As you know, sharing is caring. I really appreciate, and we are thrilled to share our journey with all of you, and I hope it's going to help some of you, if not all.
So I'll start out by talking about who is DSW. So DSW Designer brand is North America's largest designer, producer, and retailer of footwear and associates. Our primary concept, DSW Designer Shoe Warehouse, offers brand names and designer shoes, both casual and athletic, for accessories. The first store opened in 1991 in Dublin, Ohio. Today we operate in more than 500 stores in about 4,400 states. We also have affiliated business groups operating in nearly 290 leased departments for other retailers such as Steinmart's. Designer brand also operates several retail concepts in Canada, which includes the Shoe Company, Shoe Warehouse, which provides convenient footwear solutions for the whole family, as well as Designer Shoe Warehouse. In 2018, we acquired the Camuto Group. It's a legendary product design and brand development organized by Vince Camuto. Some of the brands you might be familiar with is Jessica Simpson and Lucky Brand. We are a public traded company on the New York Stock Exchange. So planning and budgeting in the cloud. What is some of the benefits that you get out of this? You're always on the latest version. It's easy metadata management. It's immediate cost savings. It increases development speed and agility. And there's little or no infrastructure needs or upgrades. With those combined scenarios, it really was a no-brainer for us to move to the cloud. That's why we chose planning. One of the other decisions that helped us determine PBCS was we were already in the cloud with a couple other applications, FCCS and ARCS. We had PBCS, but it was a very small application that we acquired when we acquired Commuto. And we already knew the benefits of it. One of the things that we had started to do before COVID came along was we started looking at moving into the EPM suite that Oracle offered instead of the individual instances such as FCCS, ARCS, and PBCS. And there was a couple of reasons for that, mainly for licensing. With the individual instances, you had to pay individual licensings, whereas with EPM, you could purchase one license and the users could have access to all your applications across the EPM environment, which really helped to reduce our costs. And there were some other factors in it. We wanted to utilize EDMC to help manage our metadata. So that's kind of how we got started in EPM, the cloud, and how we chose the planning application as our choice for moving on-prem to the cloud. So on our agenda today, we'll talk about our Hyperion on-prem application. We'll give you an overview of what that application entailed. We'll kind of describe why we chose to go to Planning Cloud, and then we'll describe the steps that we use to move to the cloud, such as dimensionality, data, forms and rules, reports and security, loading data, and automating using a tool some of you may or may not be familiar with. It's OneCloud. They have been an outstanding partner through this process. And we'll get into a slide and we can give you more detail on them. The other thing was UAT with the users, and then training the users. And then we'll go into lessons learned, and then what are next steps, and then we'll take some Q&A from there. So just to give you a little bit of background, we are a brick and mortar company. We did have some online sales. When COVID hit us, we shut our brick and mortar store, which left us vulnerable to only having online sales, and we had a lot of inventory that needed to be moved. This really forced us to kind of shift our thinking from a business perspective of how are we going to survive through the COVID. Initially, probably as with most of you, you're thinking, wow, this is only going to be maybe a couple weeks, a month at the most. And after a couple weeks went by and a month, we started realizing, wow, this is the new world. This is the new culture that we're going to have to adapt to. So we really became more heavily involved in online. And by doing that, we needed to be more agile. And what we call in our business, we needed to become more nimble on our feet. We had to be able to quickly adapt to change, and we had to be able to do it in such a way that our customers were not impacted, and also given our individual people at the corporate level the proper tools to be able to adapt to change in this ever-changing environment that we're now into. So one of the things that we had a roadmap, one of the things that we wanted to do was obviously move our cloud applications into EPM. And then our next step was to move all of our on-prem applications into the cloud. This just kind of sped that roadmap up. Originally, that on-prem to the cloud was going to be a little bit further down the road, but there was a need to hurry up and get this into the cloud because with most of the businesses, a lot of people got furloughed. We had to reduce our headcount. One of the biggest areas that took some of the headcount was obviously our IT department. So some of the people that were there supporting us were no longer in the business or were on furlough. So one of the things we quickly realized is, wow, this is an opportunity for us to move the on-prem to the cloud and become less dependent upon IT and be more self-sufficient to help the business. So in doing that, we looked at our on-prem application. Our current on-prem application is a EPM-enabled planning application. It was not a classic application. We were on a version 11.1.2.1.6, very old version. It had not been supported very well. It was not kept up to date with patches and things like that. We had roughly 65 users. The products that were heavily used were Hyperion Planning, SmartView, and Financial Report Studio. We had one planning application and one reporting application. And it was mainly used for planning revenue and expenses. The source that was currently using and we're still using is Lawson. It is a AS400 ERP system. It's very outdated, and we're in the process of looking how we can move to a new ERP system. The back-end servers were out of scope and needed upgrades. So this whole thing just kind of helped us speed along to be able to move from on-prem to the cloud. So that was kind of our on-prem application. Then we had to determine what was going to be the quickest route to get on-prem to the cloud. And there's multiple ways you can do this. One of them being the Oracle Planning Cloud. With the Oracle Cloud, you get the same functionality as Hyperion Planning Solution. Part of it's the Oracle EPM suite. There's centralized planning and forecasting, shortened planning cycles, supports all forecast methods, improves planning and forecast accuracies. Planning in Excel was supported, predictive planning, approvals, and dynamic workflows. It gave us the flexibility to do more what-if modeling in Sandbox, fast calculations, powerful reporting and analysis, supported dashboards and ad hoc, fast and easy deployment, and drill through with data management. These were some of the things that we looked for when we were looking to move to the cloud, and Oracle Planning was definitely, the cloud was the way that we chose to go. So what's new in the planning cloud? You still get all your on-prem planning features. Some of the other available features that you get is it's a simpler user interface. That's one of the things as we migrated to the cloud and we were going through UAT with the users that we really got a lot of compliments on, was that the user interface was much easier than the old on-prem. Users have really adapted to this great, a lot quicker than what we had anticipated. There's navigation flows, improved dashboarding, auto saving, attribute dimension supports, rolling forecast, smart push, easier application, backup and migration, dashboarding, and then enhancements for ASO planning. And then some other features that you can see here on the PowerPoint. Again, why did we choose the cloud? A couple of the biggest factors were the version we were on was very old. It was very outdated. It was not being maintained. It was not being patched. Some of the other things that really kind of drove that factor was, again, our business was hit with COVID. We had a lot of furloughs. We had some people we had to let go. We started realizing that we had to become a little bit less dependent upon IT, and we had to reduce cost. One of the ways that we seen to do this, if we was to do an upgrade with on-prem, we were going to have to purchase new hardware, new software. So there was some upfront savings by not having to go with no hardware purchase, no software. With the cloud, everything is subscription based. There was less involvement with the IT. IT was already being over taxed with some of the furloughs that they were dealing with. So this was a great opportunity for us to take some of that workload off their plate. And probably the biggest thing is it gave us total cost of ownership versus the on-prem. We became more the owners. We could manage everything from the data to the metadata to how the end users use the product. Again, there was no hardware maintenance cost, limited IT related cost. There was no annual software maintenance, and we didn't have to go through upgrades. All the upgrades are handled through the cloud. They're patched. You don't have to worry about that. So that was a big plus for us as well. How did we get there? So we kind of sit back and we thought about some of the different options. There's several options that you can take. Obviously, if you're on 11.1, 2.1 or newer, you can do what they call an easy lift and shift. The problem with that is you can't do that if you're in an EPMA application. You can only do that with a classic. So after thinking through this and talking, the approach that we felt was best was to create a new application and import our dimensionalities and then LCM some of the artifacts and then migrate the data. So the first thing that we did is we created a new application. So as we were on a very old version and it was EPM enabled planning application, we couldn't just do a simple lift and shift of our on-prem application. So the first thing we did is we LCM the artifacts, we exported them out of the on-prem application, which could not be imported directly into the cloud. Oracle recommended that we convert our EPM enabled planning application to a classic planning application and then import in the artifacts into the cloud. We opted to create a new application. To get the dimensionality, we migrated the dimensionality to the new application. And how we did that is we created a freeform planning application. Once we created the freeform planning application, we simply copied the OTL file and put it into the freeform application. Once that was done, we were able to export the dimensions from the freeform planning application into the new actual planning cloud application. And then for the business rules and forms, once we had the structure, the dimensionality into the planning application, we were able to export using LCM, and we LCM the artifacts from the shared services like the business rules and forms, and then we imported the LCM artifacts into the planning application under the migration in the cloud. It was a very simple process. You migrated them out, you went into the cloud, and you simply imported the artifacts that you wanted to migrate into your cloud-based application. Once we got the forms and that in there, then we went in and we migrated the calc scripts. There is no calc scripts in the planning cloud, so we had to convert all of our calc scripts into business rules, and we've done that in the calc manager to match our calc scripts. It was pretty simple. You just created a new rule. You copied and pasted your calc script into the calc manager rule, and then you deployed that rule. Very simple process. Didn't take us long. We had approximately, I think we had somewhere roughly in the neighborhood of about, I don't know, maybe 100 couch scripts that we had to do this to. And we basically divide it and conquer this, and it was a pretty fast and simple process. And because we're using the same dimensionalities, we didn't change any names or anything like that. Everything validated fairly quickly. For the data, in order to bring the data in, we exported the level 0 data from EAS, and then we imported that data into the freeform application in the SBase format. Once we imported it into the freeform planning application, we then exported it out and imported it into the planning cloud application. We tried to get the level 0 into the planning application instead of freeform planning, but we were running into some issues. We never really could understand what was causing some of that issue, but we imported into the freeform planning, exported it, loaded right into the planning application with no problems. Again, this was a fairly simple process. And one of the things that you'll notice in the cloud is you really have the same functionality that you did in the on-prem. It's just things are in a little bit different spots and you got to go look for them. Everything else it's really pretty much the same. Once you get in there and you discover where everything is, things will start moving along really quickly for you. So then our next step is going out and getting reports. We have hundreds and hundreds of reports. And what we did there is we exported the reports from the on-prem repository. Basically, you just click on File, say Export, and then we imported those into the cloud application. The only really thing once you do that is you just have to replace the database connection and point it to the new cloud application. Once we did that, we went in and we were able to open up the reports and make sure that each one of the reports open, didn't give us any errors. And that, again, that took us a couple hours by dividing and conquering between me and Ruthvik. I went fairly quick. Didn't have any issues. So not a problem. Security. This was probably, out of all the things that we did, this was probably the one that cost us the most time in setting up security. We enabled single sign-on. By doing that, it gave us the ability to use single sign-on with all of our applications. We use single sign-on for FCCS, ARCs, PBCS. The nice part about the single sign-on function is once a user signs into one application, they don't have to sign in. It takes them right straight in. You sign in the morning, boom, you're in there for the rest of the day. So we enabled the single sign-on. We added our users into the Oracle OneCloud services. And inside of there, we assigned them the appropriate user access to the application. That being whether they were a power user, a viewer, or administrator. And each one of those has certain abilities to do. So and then once we did that, we created groups manually in the cloud and assigned our users to the appropriate groups. And then once the groups were there, we assigned those groups to dimensionality, level security. One thing this did is it forced us to revisit our security. We work closely with our IT folks and with the SOX compliant to make sure that we were SOX compliant with this. It forced us to come up with a new process on how people request access, who approve that access, and what rows within each application. This process took us much longer than the other steps did, but it was a good exercise. It definitely shined the light on a couple of things that perhaps we weren't doing correctly, or to make access to certain dimensions easier for the users. So loading of the data, once we had the level 0 data in there, then we had to load our data that we load every night. We load nightly data in there every night. It's usually around midnight. And one of the tools that we had researched and looked at, because some of our applications we were using data management, which comes with your tools, and then we were looking at the application, which is called OneCloud. If you've never used this tool, it's a phenomenal tool. They have been great partners with us, very supportive. They've helped us every step of the way. In the on-prem system, we were loading the data using S-based format, using shell scripts. In the new world, we started utilizing the OneCloud to convert our ERP output files into an appropriate planning format to load data into the planning cloud. OneCloud also has a very flexible automation and approval process built within it. The nice part about it is you can see this process taking place as the data is loading. So in this example, you can see where the file comes in. It went through a SQL. We modified a couple of changes on there. We copied off a copy of the file for archive. We uploaded the data file. We cleared our actuals, imported the data. Once the data was loaded, it kicks off some calc scripts. So the process is easy. It's drag and drop. There's no coding that you have to write behind the scenes. Very flexible tool, easy to use. Again, if you've not used it, I highly recommend you go out to their website and take a look at the tool. Here's one of the things that I've learned over the years of whenever you're creating an application or you're moving applications or you're modifying, is make sure you do your due diligence, UAT. There's nothing more embarrassing than to roll out an application and you find out that several things don't work and users can't get it. And if you want to make enemies real quick, this is the one thing that can make it. So you want to make sure you cover all your bases. You want to make sure that all your data ties out to your new planning cloud application. You want to make sure that all your automation works correctly. Make sure that all the forms are accessible by all the users and that they can connect to them. Same thing with reports. Make sure that all the reports are accessible. The users can connect to them. Make sure to tie back to the original application. We went as far as taking and tying our reports, the cloud reports to the on-prem reports to make sure that those ticked and tied. Train the users. A lot of our users, the cloud was new. Like I said, we did have FCCS and ARCs, but it was a very small crowd that used that. So a lot of this was new to people moving to the cloud instance. A lot of it's still the same. Smart View still the same. You're just changing your URL on how you get to it. We sent out, so what we did is we sent out instructions in our UAT packet. We had what we expected the users to test. It was as simple as, can I log in? Can I open a form? Can I open a report? Can I connect to SmartView? We gave them instructions on how to connect to SmartView. We even gave them instructions on how to change their current URL from the on-prem to the cloud. And the users, they loved it. We really thought this was going to be one of the biggest headaches. We were going to have a lot of people reaching out to us. Hey, I can't connect my spreadsheet. I can't get it open. I can't get it to retrieve. And we had a lot of users that really just did a great job following those instructions. You can use Microsoft Edge or Firefox to connect. We sent out instructions on how to connect to the new Planning Cloud application using specific URLs. We even gave them how they could, up on their toolbar, create a folder that says PBCS, FCCS, and within each one of those folders, they had their applications names, whether it was EPM7, which is equal to ARGS, or EPM8, which was, FCCS. And then we also included instructions on how to access reports and forms through the web, not just through SmartView, but also use them through the web. And the end result was this. When they went into their data entry, all their folders were there, their same forms were there, the reports. The users loved this. Other than it being a different view to them, they said that, the feel was still there. Everything was there that they needed to do their job. They were very pleased. We did this entire process in probably about a month and a half. And that included us creating the application and doing UAT with the users and training the users. So we are now sunsetting our on-prem applications. All of our products are now to the cloud. We no longer have the requirements of having to do upgrades or anything like that. Everything is cloud-based now. And again, the cloud, I just want to emphasize, you're always on the latest version. Metadata management is super easy. I don't know if many of y'all remember in on-prem, there was a couple ways you could get your accounts, entities, and things in there. With the cloud, it's super simple. You can literally add accounts and entities through SmartView. I thought that was phenomenal. You can add an account and an entity in minutes, where it used to take you, a pretty lengthy process to get that done. We immediately seen cost savings with this product from a license perspective to IT. We increased our development speed and agility. And, again, there was no infrastructure needs or upgrades moving forward in the future. Lessons learned. Probably the biggest thing, like I said, is security. Be prepared to reduce security. Make sure you allocate time to validate and test your data. Learning curve wasn't too bad, other than EPMA artifacts. And be sure to align the properties between on-prem freeform planning and the new PBC application. One of the things that we did discover when we did this is, for some reason, not all, just a selected few, some of the properties changed on some of the dimensions. It wasn't a lot, so it wasn't that difficult to discover which ones were giving us issues, and we changed them. But overall, it was a good experience. It went a lot smoother and a lot quicker than what we had anticipated. I would highly recommend, if you're thinking about moving to the cloud, I would highly recommend that you do it. What's next for DSW? So this is one of the biggest downfalls that we had with our planning or budgeting and projecting. We had DSW, and then we had what was our Commuto group, and then we have a Canadian group. DSW had their own planning application. Commuto had their own application. Canada has nothing. So our next step is to create what we call an Inc. planning application, which will bring all that together. We'll sunset the DSW planning application. We'll sunset Commuto. Everything will be in there. And we're wanting to do this with one standard chart of account, utilizing EDMC. And just want to make sure when I say one standard chart of accounts, I'm really more talking about within the applications in the cloud, not in the ERP systems. The numbering system in each ERP system is different. We're not going to go back and have everybody change their numbering schemes or anything like that. You can get around that by using mapping. So you could create your standard chart of accounts. You can take all these accounts, you can map them to where you would want those to go in a standard chart of account. And the reason for us doing that is we want to make sure that all of our applications going across the cloud are in sync, so that when somebody starts comparing data, they're talking apples to apples versus apples to oranges. This is our next project, and we're hoping to get started on that here in the next month. And with that, we'll open up questions for anybody who has questions.
Thanks so much, Doug. Anybody have any questions for Doug and Ruthvik? I actually had two follow-up questions come in. One is, what is your favorite or most beneficial feature in the cloud?
Me personally, I would have to say the metadata. If you're old school, like what I came from before I got introduced to the cloud, metadata I always felt like was just such a struggle to get into the system. And when I was shown, hey, I can add this account through SmartView, I thought that was the most phenomenal thing. I thought Oracle really knocked it out of the park with that. So to me personally, I would say metadata. Ruthvik, I'm not sure if you have something that you might think is a better tool.
Yeah, I mean, in the cloud, maintenance is so easy comparing to the old on-prem world. Like, for example, let's say if we have a new business request to change some account hierarchies or something like that, and they want to see how it's going to roll up in their reporting needs. So we can just take a snapshot of production, move into QA, and then make those changes. Boom, it's there. It's a kind of similar approach in the on-prem world, but with the EPM Automate and snapshots, you don't have to download files or anything. It's all in the cloud, and they all transfer within the Oracle Cloud. So I kind of feel that it's easy for maintenance, and also adding accounts in our cost center. Every month, it's pretty damn slick, and yeah, kind of like that.
Okay, good. And then the second part of that question was, is there anything that you miss from on-prem?
No.
No. Good answer. All right, couple more questions have come in. What was the biggest difference or benefit for the finance users?
So I think the biggest benefit that I think the users liked is number one. Believe it or not, the user interface, for some reason they loved it. They just thought it was great that they can click on this URL and boom, it takes them right straight to this application. It was easy to maneuver around inside the application. They liked the fact that when we told them we were going to the cloud, the first reaction was, oh no, now we got to rebuild all of our spreadsheets. We got to do this, we got to do that. And when we told them, we said, no, you're literally it's going to be the same application. You're not going to have to change anything. The only thing you're going to change in your spreadsheet is your connection to the new application. Your dimensionality is going to stay the same. Everything is the same. And they, like I said, they were fantastic at following the instructions that we laid out for them. UAT went much quicker than what we thought it would be. We really thought we were going to have a lot of questions, and this thing we actually built into our timeline, where we thought we might have to extend UAT, and it actually got completed on time. So the users were very flexible and really appreciated, what we gave to them.
One thing I would like to add over here is in the PBCS world, the first thing that the users will see the changes in the look and feel, but it actually kind of makes sense for them because some of them still use FCCS and ARCs, and it's a similar layout, and also the biggest advantages that they could get in the cloud world is they can log in using their iPad, and hopefully we'll get into building new dashboards in PBCS so that they can maybe view some cool diagrams and pie charts and all that fancy stuff. We haven't got a chance to build them yet, but that's in our future roadmap.
Oh, good. And the next question is, do you have any CapEx or workforce applications that you converted to the cloud? And if so, was the transition fairly smooth?
So right now, we do not have any CapEx or workforce application. That is on our future roadmap as a request that people want us to look into. We actually had somebody come in and give us a demo on that. The people who were interested were really excited about it. Again, with the COVID, obviously, cash is restraining a lot of businesses. A lot of businesses are wanting to, save on cash and stuff. So there is that is kind of hampering a little bit on where we're getting to, but it is on our roadmap for the future.
Okay, gotcha. All right, any other questions for Doug and Ruthvik? Okay, well, thank you both very much for your participation in today's conference. It was a very, very informative presentation, and we appreciate it. And I want to encourage everybody else to stay tuned for our next presentation, which will be Sohail Ali with Lululemon and Interrel's own Kevin Whalen talking about steps to set up strategic modeling for retail.